Cryptography. It's kind of the invisible shield of our digital world.
Right. Absolutely. It's the complex math protecting, well, everything. Your bank account, government secrets, you name it.
But here's the thing that probably keeps security auditors up at night. How do we actually know that the encryption, the specific module protecting our most sensitive stuff, PII, payment info, government CUI, how do we know it's mathematically sound?
And not just sound, but physically secure.
Okay.
And implemented correctly.
Exactly. It's the core problem of digital trust, isn't it?
It really is. Security needs proof. It needs things to be auditable, resilient against, serious attacks.
Right.
When a government or, say, a bank relies on encryption, they need solid third-party assurance. Assurance that the keys are safe, the algorithms are strong.
And that the implementation hasn't been messed up either by accident or, well, deliberately.
Precisely.
And that assurance, it's not just a vendor saying, trust us. It's a really technical, government-mandated set of standards. So today, we're diving deep into the absolute bedrock of that trust, the U.S. government's Federal Information Processing Standards.
FIPS.
FIPS, yeah.
The big ones.
We're going to break down the three main pillars, FIPS 199, FIPS 197, and the really crucial one, FIPS S140 for assurance.
We'll look at what they cover, why they're mandatory.
And this massive transition happening now from FIPS 142 to 143, what does that mean for everyone globally? Finance, healthcare.
It's a huge shift. And we'll dig into the research you, our listeners, have provided us.
Right.
To kind of expose some surprising, maybe deep-seated limitations in the whole compliance process itself.
It's going to be fascinating. Okay, before we jump in, welcome to InfoSec Bytes, your go-to show for bite-sized insights on information security, AI, cloud, quantum, and cybersecurity incident root cause analysis. With over 100 deep dives, we've got you covered on the latest trends and tips. Please like, subscribe, and share to join the conversation on various platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and stay secure.
All right, so FIPS. To really get why some crypto hardware needs, the extreme validation of FIPS 140 level 3 or 4.
You got to start at the beginning.
You have to start with the data itself. How important is it? That classification process, that's step 0 for any federal system, and FIPS 199 defines how you do it.
Okay, FIPS 199. Standards for Security Categorization of Federal Information and Information Systems. Sounds a bit dry, maybe.
Yeah, the title's not exactly thrilling.
But the research shows it's basically the trigger for the entire U.S. federal security approach. It's fundamental.
It is the absolute starting point for the risk management framework, the RMF. FIPS 199 came out of FISMA, the Federal Information Security Management Act, back in 2002.
Right. FISMA.
Before that, different agencies kind of had their own ideas about what high risk meant. It was inconsistent.
Make things difficult, I imagine.
Yeah, especially for cross-agency security. FIPS 199 created one mandatory unified way to look at risk. And here's the kicker. If you don't categorize your risk right using this standard,
then everything else is built on shaky ground.
Exactly. Your controls, your monitoring, the whole security process is fundamentally flawed from the start. We're talking millions of dollars potentially wasted or misallocated.
Wow. So security doesn't kick off with picking an encryption key or a firewall rule. It starts with classifying the data and the system. That's FIPS 199's job. How does it standardize that?
It uses the classic CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability.
The fundamentals.
Right. But FIPS 199 defines these very precisely based on the potential adverse impact if any one of those three gets compromised.
Adverse impact.
The goal is to define the consequences. Clearly, measurably, how bad could it be?
And the standard gives us 3 levels for that impact: low, moderate, and high. These sound really important. The definitions must be key.
They absolutely are. They determine the baseline security needed, and the consequences are tied directly to, the organization's operations, its assets, or individuals.
Okay, let's break them down. Low impact.
So low impact is defined as having a limited adverse effect. Think minor financial loss, maybe a noticeable hiccup in how well things work, but it's manageable.
Minor harm to people, like a small privacy issue.
Exactly. Minor harm, minimal loss of privacy. The organization can still basically do its main job, maybe with a bit of inconvenience.
All right. Moderate.
Moderate implies a serious adverse effect. Here, the consequences start to really hurt. Significant damage to the mission, maybe significant financial loss.
What about people?
Serious harm, but not life-threatening, or significant damage to their assets. The organization can often still function, but the impact is deep and probably widespread.
Okay, that leaves high impact. This must be the worst case scenario.
It is. High GH impact is the severe or catastrophic level. This means a total loss of mission capability. The organization just can't do one or more of its essential functions anymore.
Or crippling financial loss.
Major, potentially crippling loss, yes. But here's the absolute crucial part for high impact.
The part that really separates it.
Yes, it's the potential harm to individuals. The high impact level includes severe or catastrophic harm, and the research highlights this specific phrase: loss of life or serious life-threatening injuries.
Loss of life, wow.
That phrase is the bright line. If compromising a system's integrity or availability, the air traffic control, or a hospital's life support system could potentially lead to someone dying.
Then it has to be categorized as high impact, no question.
No question. And that forces an incredibly high level of security assurance downstream.
That makes the stakes incredibly clear. Okay, but what if a system holds different kinds of data, like some public stuff, low confidentiality, but also some sensitive research data, moderate confidentiality? Does it average out?
No, absolutely not. It uses the high watermark principle.
By watermark?
Yeah. The system's final security category, the SC, is set by the highest impact level found across any data type it handles for each of the CIA components.
So in my example, 10 low data types, 1 moderate.
The system's confidentiality component becomes C moderate, period. Doesn't matter about the other 10. You have to apply the moderate baseline controls needed for confidentiality to that whole system.
Doesn't that lead to spending way more than necessary sometimes? If there's just one tiny high-impact file on a huge system?
It absolutely drives up costs, yes. But from a risk standpoint, it's seen as necessary. Trying to perfectly wall off data with different security needs within the same system boundary is often really hard, maybe impossible.
So FIPS 199 forces a choice.
Right. Either you architecturally segment the system, move that high-impact stuff to its own dedicated super secure environment, or you secure the entire shared environment to the highest level present.
And the potential for loss of life justifies that cost for high systems.
Exactly. The cost is weighed against that catastrophic potential. This categorization, this FIPS 199 step, is the mandatory foundation. It ensures security is proportional to the risk, and it directly feeds into selecting controls from NIST SP 853.
Makes sense. And you mentioned PII earlier. How does FIPS 199 connect to protecting personal data?
It connects directly. The definition of confidentiality within FIPS 199 explicitly includes protecting personal privacy. So that's the hook. It ensures that FIPS 199 categorization directly applies to protecting personally identifiable information, PII, as required under the Privacy Act.
Right.
If PII is involved, that often bumps up the required categorization, especially for confidentiality. Okay, so FIPS 199 tells you the risk level. Let's say it comes out as high confidentiality for a system.
Right, we know the stakes.
Now, the government needs a specific tool, a proven, approved tool to handle that risk. You can't just grab any encryption algorithm off the shelf, especially not for federal data.
There has to be a standard.
And that standard is FIPS 197.
FIPS 197. This one specifies the Advanced Encryption Standard, AES. Now, AES wasn't just invented by NIST, right? This came out of a big competition.
A huge global competition.
Yeah.
FIPS 197 basically codified the winner, an algorithm called Rhine as the official advanced encryption standard for the U.S. government.
Rhindell, okay.
The whole selection process took years. It involved cryptographers from all over the world reviewing candidates, trying to break them. The goal was to pick something modern, strong against all known attacks, and globally vetted.
That global aspect is important, right? For interoperability, trusting suppliers.
Absolutely crucial. So FIPS 197 doesn't just say use strong encryption. It says use this specific standardized algorithm, AES.
Okay, what are the key technical details in FIPS 197? What does it define?
Well, first, AES is a symmetric block cipher.
Symmetric meaning same key for encryption and decryption.
Exactly. And block cipher means it works on fixed-size chunks of data. FIPS 197 specifies that block size must be 128 bits.
Always 128 bits.
For FIPS 197 AES, yes. The original Rhindell was a bit more flexible, but the standard locks it at 128-bit blocks. This ensures every compliant implementation handles the data the same way, which is vital for things to work together properly.
Okay, and it offers different levels of security within AES itself through key lengths.
Right. The standard defines 3 approved key lengths. And the longer the key, generally the more secure it is, and the more computational rounds the algorithm performs internally.
What are the options?
You've got AES 128, uses a 128-bit key, that's 10 rounds. AES 192 uses a 192-bit key, 12 rounds. AES 256, the longest, 256-bit key, 14 rounds.
Okay, 3 choices. Now, there was a policy decision around 2003 about which key length to use for protecting classified national security information.
Yes, that was important. It cemented AES's role for sensitive data. The policy states that all three key lengths, 128, 192, and 256 bits, are considered strong enough to protect information up to the secret level.
Even 128-bit, that's interesting.
It speaks to the fundamental strength of the AES algorithm itself. But if the data is classified as top secret,
Then you need more.
then the standard mandates using either AES 192 or AES 256.
Why the jump? Is 128-bit actually breakable or something?
Not with today's computers, no. Not practically, anyway. But requiring 192 or 256 for top secret does a couple of things. First, it provides a huge safety margin. Makes brute force attacks just totally infeasible, even for, nation states with massive resources for a very long time.
Future-proofing, almost.
Exactly. And second, maybe more importantly, it offers better theoretical protection against future threats, particularly quantum computing.
Quantum threat.
Right. While practical quantum attacks on encryption are still a way off, theoretically, they could significantly weaken symmetric keys. Using 192 or 256 bits provides much better resilience against that potential future threat for the most sensitive data. The government's thinking long-term for top-secret stuff.
Okay, so this links everything together. FIPS 199 determines the risk, say, high confidentiality. Then FIPS 197 tells you the specific approved tool you must use to meet that risk, like AES 256.
Precisely. FIPS 197 gives you the required algorithm.
Yeah.
And that sets the stage perfectly for FIPS 140.
Which tells you how securely you need to build and operate the system that uses that algorithm.
Exactly. The assurance piece.
All right, so FIPS 197 gives us the approved recipe, AES. FIPS 140 then is like the super strict quality control check on the oven itself, making sure the module running the crypto is built right, handles keys safely, and hasn't been tampered with.
That's a great analogy. FIPS 140 is the assurance layer. It lays out the minimum security requirements for cryptographic modules.
Modules meaning hardware, software.
Can be any of those. Hardware, software, firmware, or even a hybrid. This is the standard the U.S. and Canadian governments use to protect sensitive but unclassified data, or SBU, which we now mostly call CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information.
Okay, and there's a whole program managing this, the CMVP.
Right, the Cryptographic Module Validation Program, CMVP, is run jointly by NIST in the U.S. and the CSE, the Communication Security Establishment, in Canada.
So it's binational from the start.
Yeah, which immediately made FIPS 140 a really significant standard, arguably the global benchmark for crypto assurance, even beyond government use.
How does the validation actually happen?
The actual testing isn't done by NIST or CSE. It's done by independent accredited labs. They're called Cryptographic and Security Testing Laboratories, or CSTLs.
Okay, independent labs do the testing.
But NIST and CSE, through the CMVP, issue the final validation certificate. They review the lab reports and make the call. And the policy here is really strict. If you're handling CUI using crypto that isn't FIPS validated, it's considered the same as providing no protection at all.
Wow, so it's like transmitting in plain text from their perspective.
Effectively, yes. For a big contractor trying to work with the government, or maybe a cloud provider aiming for FedRAMP approval, using an unvalidated crypto library isn't just a minor issue. It's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
It fundamentally undermines the security claim for any data going through it.
Okay. So to provide different levels of assurance, FIPS 140 has these 4 levels, L1 to L4.
Exactly. 4 security levels, and the requirements ramp up significantly as you go higher. The cost and engineering effort can jump exponentially between levels.
Let's dig into those levels, especially the difference between level 2 and level 3. You mentioned a hardware wall there.
Yeah, that's a key distinction. Let's walk through them. Level 1, basic. This is the entry point. Needs production-grade equipment, uses FIPS-approved algorithms like AES from FIPS 197. This is where you typically find software-only modules, like a crypto library in an operating system. The main thing is it has to work according to its security policy document.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Level 2.
Level 2, tamper evidence. Now, physical security starts to matter. Level 2 requires physical tamper evidence. Think special seals that break if you open the case, or coatings that show scratches, or maybe opaque enclosures, things that make it obvious if someone tried to mess with it physically.
And something about authentication.
Right. Level 2 also mandates role-based authentication. So you need distinct roles, like a user role and an administrator or crypto officer role, and the module has to authenticate users into those roles.
Okay, tamper evidence and roles. Now, level 3, the hardware wall. What makes this such a big leap?
Level 3, tamper resistance. This is where it gets serious, and usually means hardware. It requires physical tamper resistance. not just showing evidence of tampering, but actively resisting it. This often means things like heavy-duty metal cases or encapsulating the sensitive chips in hard epoxy potting compound to make physical probing extremely difficult.
And authentication gets tougher, too.
Much tougher. Authentication must be identity-based. Not just roles, but linking actions to a specific unique user credential, like a smart card or a token. Think multi-factor authentication, often.
So you know exactly who did what.
Exactly. Accountability. And crucially, Level 3 demands strong separation, physical or logical, of the interfaces used for input-output, control, and status, especially protecting the pathways for critical security parameters, the CSPs.
CSPs meaning the secret keys.
Primarily, yes. Secret keys, private keys, authentication data. If the module's boundary is breached somehow, Level 3 designs aim to prevent the attacker from easily accessing or extracting those CSPs.
You hear Level 3 mentioned a lot in commercial contexts, like finance and PCI DSS. Why is L3 often the target there, not just L1 or L2?
It hits a sweet spot, really. Level 3 provides significant protection against physical attacks, casual ones, opportunistic ones, and ensures that strong accountability with identity-based auth. But it's still generally practical to deploy and manage within a reasonably secure environment like a data center.
And almost always means hardware, right?
In practice, yes. While FIPS 142 technically allowed for software-only Level 3, the physical resistance requirements make L3, and definitely L4, effectively hardware-only certifications. This is a big reason why the hardware security module, or HSM market, exists and thrives. They're built to meet L3 or L4.
Okay, so that leaves the highest level, Level 4.
Level 4, maximum security. This is designed for the toughest situations. Think modules operating in physically unprotected, potentially hostile environments. It requires tamper-active response.
Active response, what does that mean?
It means if the module detects a physical attack, like drilling the case, or even certain environmental attacks like voltage spikes, extreme temperatures, maybe even radiation, it must immediately and actively destroy its secrets.
Destroy them? How?
Through zeroization. It's the instantaneous, automated erasure of all critical security parameters, all the keys. The module basically bricks itself, becoming useless, but it guarantees the secrets aren't compromised.
Wow. And FIPS 143 made this even tougher.
Yes, 143 specifically added mandatory environmental failure protection, EFP, detecting those environmental attacks, and required multi-factor authentication, MFA, as standard for Level 4. It's the ultimate paranoia level, but necessary for certain scenarios.
Okay, so achieving any of these levels, especially 3 or 4, sounds intense. It's not just about the crypto algorithm itself. The validation covers a lot more ground.
Oh, absolutely. The evaluation covers 11 distinct security domains. You have to meet the requirements for your target level across all 11 areas. Fail one, you fail the whole validation at that level.
11 domains. Can you give us a quick sense of what they cover? It sounds comprehensive.
It is. Let's touch on a few key ones. 1, cryptographic module specification. This is basically the rulebook, the security policy document. It has to detail exactly how to operate the module in its FIPS-approved mode, list all the approved algorithms, roles, services, everything. It's critical for audits. 2, ports and interfaces. Requires clear separation. Data in-out needs to be kept separate from key management interfaces, status outputs, etc. Prevent leakage. 3, roles, services, and authentication. Defines who can do what. Who generates keys, who can just use crypto, who can zeroize, and specified how strong the authentication needs to be. 4, physical security. This is where those tamper evidence L2, resistance L3, and response L4 requirements live. 5, cryptographic key management. This is huge. How are keys generated? Must use FIPS-approved random number generators. How are they stored securely? How are they entered or outputted? And crucially, how are they destroyed? Zeroized.
Okay, what else?
6, EMC. Electromagnetic interference compatibility ensures the module doesn't leak sensitive info via electronic emissions and isn't susceptible to interference from outside. 7, self-tests. Modules have to test themselves. Power on self-tests, POST. Check critical functions when booting up. Conditional self-tests run during operation, like checking a new key pair looks right. 8, design assurance. This looks at the vendor's development process, proof of secure coding practices, configuration management, vulnerability scanning during design, security built in, not bolted on.
That's becoming more important everywhere.
Definitely. 9, mitigation of other attacks, a bit of a catch-all for more exotic threats. This is where things like Tempest considerations might fit in, preventing espionage via compromising emanations. 10, operational environment, mostly for software modules, L1, defines limits on the host system, which OS versions, patches, etc. are approved. 11, software firmware security. This is strengthened in FIPS 1.4 to 50 to 3. Focuses on ensuring the code itself is protected, like requiring digitally signed firmware updates to prevent loading malicious code.
Wow. That's way more than just checking if AES works. It's like an entire secure hardware and software development lifecycle audit.
It essentially is. It's designed to build very high confidence in the module's overall security posture. So FIPS 142 was the standard for a long time, since 2001. But, the threats evolved a lot.
Technology changed, attacks got more sophisticated.
Exactly. So FIPS 143 became necessary. It was approved in 2019, became effective later that year. It's designed to tackle some of the more advanced attacks, both physical and logical, that 142 didn't fully cover.
And one of the biggest changes strategically was about aligning with international standards.
Yes, that's huge, especially for global companies. FIPS 143 isn't just a standalone NIST document anymore. It formally references international ISO-IX standards.
ISO standards. Which ones?
ISO-IX 19790 for the core security requirements, and ISO-IX 24759 for the testing requirements.
What does that mean in practice?
It means a vendor developing a cryptographic module can now largely use the same core requirements and testing procedures for FIPS validation as they would for certifications at other parts of the world that also use those ISO standards. It streamlines things massively.
Less duplication of effort.
Right. NIST still manages any U.S. or Canadian-specific additions or interpretations through a series of documents, the SP 800-140 series, but the foundation is now globally aligned.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing for vendors. But this transition, forcing everyone off 142, has created some serious deadlines. The research mentions a procurement cliff. That sounds ominous.
It is for organizations that aren't prepared. These dates are critical if you're involved in buying or building systems for the federal government or related sectors. First off, the CMVP stopped accepting new FIPS 142 validation submissions way back on April 1st, 2022. So any new product seeking validation must go through the 143 process.
Okay, the door's closed for new 142s. What's the cliff?
The big one is September 24th, 2026. That's the deadline. On that date, all active FIPS 142 certificates get moved to the historical list.
It's historical list, meaning
Then and they're no longer considered active validations. And, crucially, after that date, federal agencies generally cannot buy FIPS 142 validated modules for new systems or for major upgrades to existing systems. They'll need FIPS 143 validated products.
September 2026. We're recording this in late 2025. That's less than 2 years away.
Exactly. And given how long government procurement cycles can be.
You needed to be planning for 142 procurement yesterday, basically.
Any new long-term project starting now absolutely must specify and acquire FIPS 143 components. Relying on 142 is building in obsolescence and compliance risk. Vendors who haven't transitioned their key products are facing a shrinking market fast.
Okay, deadlines noted. Let's talk about the technical reasons why 143 was needed. What were the flaws in 142 it aimed to fix? The research mentioned the side channel flaw as a big one.
Yes, that was probably the most significant technical driver. FIPS 142 was pretty good on physical security, breaking the box open, but it was weaker on certain logical attacks that didn't require physical intrusion.
Like side channel attacks.
Precisely. A module could have, say, a level 3 certified hardened shell, making it physically tough. But it could still be leaking information unintentionally through side channels, making it vulnerable to attacks like differential power analysis or DPA.
DPA, how does that work? You're not breaking the crypto math, right?
No, you're not breaking AES itself. DPA is non-invasive. The attacker monitors physical side effects of the crypto chip while it's working. Usually it's tiny variations in power consumption.
Power consumption.
Yeah. When the chip performs an operation like one round of AES encryption, the amount of power it draws fluctuates slightly depending on the actual bits of the secret key being processed at that moment.
Seriously, you can see that from the outside.
With sensitive enough equipment and enough measurements, yes. By collecting thousands of these power traces while the module encrypts known data and then doing sophisticated statistical analysis.
You can figure out the key without ever opening the box or breaking the algorithm.
That's the threat. You can potentially recover the secret key just by watching how much power it uses. It was a major blind spot in 142's focus on physical integrity.
So how does FIPS 142E3 fix this?
It introduces a formal non-invasive security domain in the requirements. Modules submitted for a 143 validation must now demonstrate they have specific countermeasures built in to mitigate DPA and similar side channel attacks.
What kind of countermeasures?
Things like adding electronic noise to mask the power fluctuations, randomizing the timing of internal operations so the signals don't line up neatly, or designing hardware circuits that are balanced, meaning they try to consume the same amount of power regardless of the data bits being processed.
Okay, so closing that side channel loophole was a big deal. Any other major technical upgrades in 143?
Yes. Level 4, the highest level, got a specific boost against fault injection attacks, sometimes called glitching.
Glitching, like messing with the chip's operation.
Exactly. It involves things like inducing a very brief voltage spike or hitting the chip with a targeted laser pulse at just the right microsecond during a critical operation, like a key comparison or generation.
The goal being to cause an error.
Right, to make the processor hiccup in a way that leaks information or bypasses a security check, potentially allowing key extraction. FIPS 143 Level 4 now explicitly requires robustness against these kinds of precise induced faults.
Makes sense for the highest security level.
Also, 143 puts more emphasis on the module itself, enforcing things like authentication complexity rules rather than just relying on instructions in the user manual. Stronger technical enforcement.
Okay, so 143 is technically stronger, globally aligned. But the transition isn't without problems. The research points out some pretty serious criticisms or limitations of the whole FIPS validation process itself. Let's talk about the patch 22 problem. That sounds paradoxical.
It is a fundamental paradox, a real conflict between the FIPS compliance model and modern agile security patching. Here's the issue. FIPS validation is strictly point in time.
Meaning the certificate only applies to that exact version of the module tested?
Exactly that version. Hardware, software, firmware. Now imagine a vendor gets their software module FIPS 142.3 validated. 6 months later, a critical vulnerability is found maybe not even in the core crypto algorithms, maybe in an adjacent library, like the TLS networking stack it uses.
Okay, a security bug needs fixing.
Right. But if the vendor patches that vulnerability, even if it makes the product more secure,
They invalidate their FIPS certificate.
instantly, because the module is no longer the exact version that was tested and certified. To regain compliance, they have to submit the newly patched version for a full revalidation.
And that revalidation, that's not quick or cheap, is it?
Not at all. It means getting back in line at one of the accredited labs, which can take months, sometimes over a year. It costs a lot of money, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars for complex validations, and involves a ton of paperwork.
So the patch 22 is, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Pretty much. Vendors face a terrible choice. Do they patch the known security hole immediately, making their customers safer but losing their crucial FIPS certificate and market access temporarily? Or do they delay patching, leaving their customers exposed to the vulnerability just to keep the FIPS certificate active?
That's really bad. It incentivizes leaving known security holes open.
It absolutely does. It leads to what we call the frozen module problem, where the officially validated version of a product might actually be less secure than a newer, patched, but unvalidated version. It's security compliance potentially undermining actual security.
Wow. Okay, that's a major issue. And you mentioned the labs. That ties into the second criticism, the validation bottleneck.
Yes, and the patch 22 problem makes this bottleneck worse. The mandatory sunset of 142, the shift to the more complex 143 requirements, and the need for revalidations after patches. It has completely overwhelmed the capacity of the accredited testing labs, the CSTLs.
There just aren't enough labs or enough trained people to handle the volume.
Essentially, yes. The demand for FIPS 143 validations far outstrips the current testing supply. This creates huge backlogs.
How long are we talking?
It varies, but vendors report waiting many months, sometimes well over a year, just to get their product tested after submission. NIST even maintains a public modules in process, or MIP list, basically acknowledging all the products stuck in this queue.
So this bottleneck doesn't just annoy vendors, it actively slows down the availability of new, secure, compliant products. It's a supply chain risk.
It's absolutely a supply chain risk for government agencies and regulated industries that need to procure 140-3 validated stuff. If the product they need is stuck on the MIP list for 18 months, that impacts their deployment schedule and potentially their security posture.
Okay, patch 22, validation bottleneck. What's the third major challenge highlighted? The gap between validated and compliant.
This one might be the most critical and honestly the most common failure point out in the real world. It's the difference between a product having a FIPS certificate and an organization actually using it correctly.
Explain that difference.
So a vendor can get their crypto module, Let's say it's a component within the Windows operating system, FIPS validated by the CMVP. That means the module itself, as tested in the lab, meets all the technical requirements of FIPS 143 Level 1, for example. It passed the tests.
Okay, the module is technically sound.
Right.
Level.
But for the organization using that Windows system to be FIPS compliant in their operations, they have to actively configure the system to run in its FIPS-approved mode of operation.
It's not automatic.
Usually not. Enabling FIPS mode is often a specific setting, maybe a group policy object or a registry key. Enabling it typically does things like disabling older, non-approved algorithms, like MD5 for hashing or maybe legacy versions of TLS, and ensuring only the validated cryptographic functions are used.
So it's like buying that level 4 safe we talked about.
But then leaving the door unlocked and the combination set to 00000.
Right, you can buy a FIPS-validated product, but if you don't turn on FIPS mode,
you might still be using weak, non-approved cryptography without realizing it. The validation certificate becomes meaningless in practice. It creates this really dangerous, false sense of security. Organizations think they're compliant and secure because they bought the right product, but their actual configuration leaves them exposed.
that seems like a huge gap for auditors to check.
It is. Verifying not just procurement, but correct configuration and operation in FIPS mode is absolutely essential, but often overlooked.
Okay, so FIPS 140 is clearly the absolute baseline for U.S. federal agencies, contractors handling CUI. It's mandatory there. But how much does its influence spread beyond direct government work into, say, commercial sectors?
Its influence is massive, really. FIPS 140 validation underpins many other major compliance frameworks, both in the U.S. and Canada, and often globally by default.
Like what?
Well, for cloud services wanting to sell to the U.S. government, FedRAMP approval is essential, and FIPS 140 validation for the underlying crypto is a core FedRAMP requirement.
Okay, FedRAMP.
And for defense contractors, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC, also relies heavily on NIST standards, including the use of FIPS-validated cryptography where encryption is required.
Right.
Let's look at finance.
Right, the financial industry. PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. Is FIPS mandatory there?
Yes, in a critical area. PCI DSS has very specific requirements for protecting sensitive data like PINs and the keys used in transactions. The standard explicitly mandates that hardware security modules, HSMs, used for this purpose must be either specifically PCI approved or they must be certified under FIPS 142 Level 3 or higher.
Level 3 or higher, so that FIPS Level 3 hardware wall we discussed.
That's the one. PCI DSS basically points to FIPS 140 Level 3 as the benchmark for high-assurance physical key protection in the financial world. It has effectively made FIPS L3 the global standard for commercial HSMs used in payments.
Interesting. Now, the research mentions some friction here, specifically around an older algorithm, triple DES or TDES.
Yeah, this is a classic example of where standards meet messy reality. FIPS, especially under NIST guidance, has been pushing hard for years to get everyone off TDES.
Because it's weaker than AU.
Significantly weaker, yes. Its shorter effective key lengths makes it much more vulnerable, especially to brute force style attacks. NIST wants everyone using AU. But the global payments infrastructure, ATMs, point-of-sale terminals, back-end processing systems, has decades of investment built around TDES. Migrating everything, especially all that embedded hardware, is a slow and incredibly expensive process.
So while FIPS says no TDES, PCI is still dealing with it.
PCI has been phasing out too, but on a slower timeline that recognizes the operational reality. So you have this friction where FIPS is very strict about moving to AES, but many payment systems still rely on TDES to function. For now, many financial institutions have to prioritize maintaining their PCI compliance, which still allows TDES in certain contexts, even as they plan their eventual complex migration towards full AES and FIPS 197 alignment.
So the legacy systems slow down the adoption of the stronger standard.
It definitely creates drag, yeah. Okay, moving on to healthcare. HIPAA, Protecting Patient Health Information, EPHI. Does HIPAA mandate FIPS 140? HIPAA itself doesn't explicitly say you must use FIPS 140. The HIPAA security rule is more performance-based. It requires that EPHI be protected, and if encryption is used as the method to render data unusable, unreadable, or indecipherable to unauthorized folks.
Which is usually how you protect it.
Right. Then the implementation guidance becomes key. NIST Special Publication 866 provides guidance on implementing the HIPAA security rule, and that document states clearly If you use encryption to meet the HIPAA requirement for protecting ePHI at rest or in transit, the encryption must be FIPS 140 validated.
Ah, so it's not in the law itself, but in the official NIST guidance that everyone follows.
Exactly. So FIPS 140 becomes the de facto mandatory standard for healthcare organizations using encryption to comply with HIPAA. Using non-validated crypto would likely be seen as failing to meet the standard of care.
Okay, one more comparison point. Common criteria, or CC, that's another big security certification standard. How does it relate to FIPS 140? Do they overlap? Compete?
They don't really compete. They're complementary. They serve different purposes but work together in a kind of hierarchy. Think of it like this. FIPS 140 is the deep dive specialist. It focuses only on the cryptographic module itself, the keys, the algorithms, the physical security, those 11 domains. Very narrow, very deep. Common criteria, ISO AE 7B408, is the broad, holistic generalist. It evaluates the overall security functions of an entire IT product, maybe a firewall, an operating system, a database. It looks at things like access control, auditing, user identification, session management, in addition to cryptography.
So CC looks at the whole product, FIPS just digs into the crypto part.
Precisely. And here's the key relationship. Common criteria evaluations rely on FIPS 140. If a product being evaluated under common criteria uses cryptography for, say, secure communications or data storage, the CC evaluators don't retest the crypto module themselves. They look for an existing, valid FIPS 140 certificate for that crypto component.
So FIPS is basically a prerequisite for CC if crypto is involved.
For achieving higher levels of assurance in CC, yes. FIPS validation provides the trusted foundation for the cryptographic functions that the broader CC evaluation then builds upon. It establishes a chain of trust. FIPS validation enables common criteria certification, which in turn might enable listing on something like the DoD Information Network Approved Products List, DODN APL. You need the specialized 6 validation first.
Okay, that clarifies the relationship. So, wrapping this all together, based on the research and everything we've discussed, what are the really critical takeaways? What should listeners, maybe CISOs, procurement folks, product managers be doing right now?
All right, 3 key recommendations. First, for CISOs, security managers, compliance teams, your mantra needs to be compliant, not just validated. Don't just check if you bought a FIPS validated product. You need to audit your systems. Is FIPS mode actually turned on? Are non-approved algorithms disabled? Are your applications correctly using the validated module? Close that implementation gap. It's likely your biggest risk.
Audit the configuration, not just the purchase order. Got it.
Second, for procurement teams, acquisition folks, that 2026 deadline for FIPS 142 is effectively here now. Given the long lead times of validation, testing, and deployment, any new system or major long-term project needs to specify and procure FIPS 143 validated components immediately. Buying 142 for new builds is asking for trouble down the road.
Don't get caught by the procurement cliff. Makes sense. And third,
for the vendors, the product managers, the engineers building this stuff, design for FIPS 143 from the very beginning. Don't treat it as an afterthought, a compliance checkbox to tick at the end. You need to build in lifecycle assurance, secure coding practices, and especially those non-invasive security mitigations for side-channel attacks from day one. If you try to bolt FIPS compliance on later, you get stuck in the validation queue and wrestle with that awful patch 22 problem forever.
Build it in, don't bolt it on. Solid advice. #tag outro. Well, that was definitely a deep dive. We went all the way from FIPS 199 setting the risk level
through FIPS 197 mandating AES as the tool,
to the incredibly detailed assurance requirements of FIPS 140, levels 1 through 4, and the huge implications of this shift to 143.
Yeah, we've seen FIPS is really the non-negotiable foundation for security in government and regulated industries. We also saw the real-world challenges. The compliance hurdles aren't just about getting the certificate.
Right, it's about avoiding those pitfalls, like the frozen module problem from patch 22, or that critical gap between having a validated product and actually running it compliantly.
That operational diligence is key. Otherwise, it can become a bit like security theater.
Absolutely. Okay, as we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listeners, with one final thought, kind of circling back to that ultimate security level we discussed.
FIPS level 4.
Right. Level 4 requires the module to actively destroy its own keys, zeroization, the instant it detects a serious physical or environmental attack. Just think about the implications of that for a second. The highest possible guarantee against your secrets being compromised is the automatic, instantaneous, total destruction of those very secrets.
It's a fascinating endpoint. The ultimate trust mechanism involves complete self-destruction to prevent betrayal.
The profound security paradox, perhaps, that really defines the extreme end of cryptographic assurance. Something to ponder. Thanks for tuning in to InfoSec Bytes. Keep exploring our 100-plus deep dives on information security, AI, cloud, quantum, and cybersecurity incident root cause analysis. Please like, subscribe. We are on various platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and share to stay connected and keep your cyber defenses strong.